Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sarah Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of 3 teenagers. I believe your body does want to and is capable of rebuilding and healing itself regardless of what chronic disease you may have. And I'm here for you to answer your questions, bring you innovative and cutting-edge technology and health solutions to empower you and your ability to reach your optimal state of health. Today, we are talking about my favorite topic, and that's gut health and how it can affect your mental, physical, and spiritual health. And I know that you really need that strong physical foundation to work on your mental and spiritual health. Whether it's overcoming anxiety or depression, losing weight, or detoxing your body in the proper way, and even increasing your level of frequency in life, you need that strong physical foundation of health in order to gain the willpower to make the bigger changes in life. And if you're new to following me, I specialize in helping you get there. You can find my health articles, my cutting-edge natural supplements, devices, and protocols at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. I dive into an array of conditions, their causes, symptoms, and how to address them naturally. And I have spent thousands of dollars and hours of my time biohacking different supplements, technologies, and diets that don't work, so you don't have to. If you have any health conditions you need help with, you can email me directly through the website. Accelerated Health Products is the sponsor of this show. So as you support my website, I'm able to bring you more cutting edge content and guests to this show. And today is no different. Today we are going to be diving in on how to optimize physical, mental, and spiritual health through the gut and how to live at a higher level of vibration or frequency as a result. So first, I wanted to talk about my free monthly group coaching that comes with my most comprehensive accelerated ascent diet cleanse. And this has changed people's lives. The groups reported easy fat loss for those stubborn pounds that just won't budge, less bloating, constipation, dysbiosis, increased and sustained physical and mental energy, better bowel movements, we got to get the toxins out, and a decreased appetite, the ability to intermittent fast, clearer skin, whiter eyes, better sleep, less moodiness, which not only benefits us, but those that we live with, and something called improved cellular permeability, or the phase angle of the cell. And that's the ability for the cell's nutrients to come in and the toxins to get out. At the end of the 30 days, you actually flush gallstones and liver stones out of the body and into the toilet. You leave with a much deeper understanding of how your body works. I give you that power back. You need to lean on other people, other doctors, much less after you go through this process. And at the end, you also will have an ability to get off some of your medications with the advice of your doctor, of course. The difference between me and any other group coaching is I provide the most cutting edge frequency enhanced supplements that work synergistically with each other, and your body doesn't experience those flu-like symptoms. You truly do feel great day one. Leave a comment below if you're interested, or check it out on the website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Now to the good stuff. Tracy Carmack is the Southwest Regional Manager of Microbiome Labs. Microbiome Labs was founded by Krishnan and Tom Bayne, and they led the way with research that sent all probiotic companies back to the drawing board, and in doing so, hope to encourage their supplement companies to follow suit. Welcome, Tracy. How are you today?
I'm great, Sarah, and I appreciate any chance to talk about the gut.
Oh my goodness. If anyone has been following me, that is my Achilles heel. And I would say it's everybody's, because everybody's issues, whether it's arthritis, brain fog, Alzheimer's, ADHD, just gut issues, bloat, dysbiosis, all the things I mentioned, it all stems from the gut. And I have been working so hard at healing my gut for years. And I've done a great job in getting to a certain point. And I've tried every single diet. I've gone from the vegan diet to the paleo, to the keto, to the carnivore, to and tried everything. And I've landed on a DNA diet where I just have discovered certain foods that agree with my body. And that may not even be the correct diet for my daughter or my son or my husband, because we are all so individual. But there are also the fact that the probiotic business and industry has exploded because the world knows how important the gut is and how important probiotics are. But the problem is so many of them have gone wrong, and they've actually made the problem worse. And a little snippet is about 1.5 years ago, when I realized what foods I should stay away from. I was also realizing that the probiotics I were taking were actually doing harm to my gut and not helping me. So that's why I'm so excited to get into this, because the 3 supplements from your company that I carry at Accelerated Health Products in the Leaky Gut bundle have changed my life. And I've got multiple clients that have had even worse gut issues than myself that felt a difference within 24 hours. And it was shocking. So let's get started, Tracy. I want to start with maybe you can just discuss and tell people in layman's terms what leaky gut is.
Sure. Most people understand that something is leaking from their gut. And when we talk about that, we know that it's toxins. And we have studied what these toxins are. And that's really what separates us from other companies, is the type of research that we do. And really finding out that the toxin, the primary one that we're talking about, causing the most damage is lipopolysaccharide, which we abbreviate as LPS. And this is a component that is part of the cell wall of gut bacteria that is normal in our flora. But when these particular organisms overpopulate or get out of ratio and are releasing this LPS, then that's what's destroying our gut lining and breaking its way through into our circulation and traveling all over the body, causing all sorts of inflammation, which inflammation is the root of all chronic illness. So that's where the fire comes from. And that's really what we target. And that's why the gut is related to all these other, what we call satellite microbiomes throughout the body, like the gut brain, the gut skin, the gut vaginal. All of those go back to the source, which is the gut.
It's so true. And the brain fog and everything that people talk about, especially right now. Here we are in a very different time, right? Where we have more toxins in our air, in our food, in our products, and more radiation, the EMFs, the heavy metals, all of these things also hit our gut and are toxins, and very difficult for our system to process and get rid of. And that is only burdening our systems even more and causing that inflammation that you're talking about. And I've talked about how chronic disease and aging is essentially the same thing, because aging is a chronic disease, right? And what they're caused by are oxidative stress and inflammation. So if we can take those 2 things out of the equation, we're going to heal our guts, we're going to heal our bodies, we're going to start actually reverse aging. So I would like to know, where are most probiotic companies going wrong?
The early probiotics really touted themselves. It was the lactobacillus and the bifidus organisms, and they were saying that they were alive and it was important to keep them alive, and that they were going to get, you take them orally and they're going to get to your gut and they're going to colonize and they're going to fix everything. Well, what we realized is that there was no research really showing that that happened. And the way you have to research that would be in a synthetic gut environment, because no one's going to volunteer their intestinal tract, right, for this kind of research. So you can synthesize this, and that's called a SHIME study. And those are done at some prestigious universities. The one that we use is at Ghent University in Belgium. And this way you can actually see, when you inoculate this system, how the probiotic travels through the different compartments of the gastrointestinal tract, where it colonizes, and how it changes the environment. Unless you do that type of study, you have no idea, A, if your probiotic is going to get to the gut and colonize, or B, what it's going to do, if it's going to help you or if it's going to hurt you. So first of all, the research needs to be there. Now, the misnomer about probiotics is that the spores travel through the gastric barriers. So they are the type that actually colonize in the gut. And they helped form our immune system early on in the development of the human intestinal tract. So they've always been there, always been in the environment. They're transient. They come and go with the food, vegetables from our garden and the fruits. And this is meant to happen. But the other type of probiotics work a different way. The Lactobacillus and Bifidus do not make it to the gut to colonize because they don't have a spore around them to protect them. So they break down and they work by metabolic receptor modification. So it's a different process. It's their digestive DNA and cell body particles have a different type of mechanism. It's still valid, it's still helpful, but it's not going to be as comprehensive as the spores do.
That makes sense. And that's just, you're getting an overpopulation of a few strands. Is that correct in the typical probiotic?
Well, they usually don't make it to the gut to colonize, but they can promote the wrong type of organisms. So the microbiome itself, and I'm sure that you've given this lecture of, we know that there's more of those organisms in and on our body than there are human cells of our body, at about a 1 to 10 ratio. But their genetics is about a 1 to 100 ratio. Without the genetics of these organisms, we cannot be human. We use their genetics for our biochemistry to produce hormones, neurotransmitters, vitamins, short-chain fatty acids, and the list goes on and on. So it's those really strong probiotics like the spores that colonize that have all of those effects. The Lactobacillus and Bifidus will break down in the stomach, and they will have particular, very specific reactions on just a particular interleukin or cytokine or neurotransmitter or HPA axis. But it's very specific, and it has to be researched for those specific actions, or otherwise you wouldn't have any idea what they do. And like I said, it has to be specific so that you're not causing harm to the body.
You had mentioned in the beginning the gut-brain axis and then the vaginal gut axis. And I was wondering if you could talk about how both of those are connected with the gut, because it, to the layman, it doesn't make sense. It seems like they would be separate and completely different entities.
Super. So the gut, there's a connection. The vagus nerve is going to connect the gut to the brain, and all of anything, if you have a leaky gut, then you more than likely will have a leaky brain. So there's a couple of different routes that these fermentation products are going to travel, either through the vagus nerve or through systemic circulation to get to the brain. So it's these organisms in the gut that make up a large percentage of the neurotransmitters and hormones that our body needs. And they'll travel through circulation or through the vagus nerve to the brain and have an effect on the glands and the brain itself that control the neurotransmitters. So for instance, we have a new product called a psychobiotic. And that particular organism, it's going to break down, but those components that it breaks down to travel up the vagus nerve and affect the HPA axis and calm the nervous system down. So this is huge, that you can have an organism that actually works to help with anxiety and sleep.
Wow. And that organism was specifically found to help with those mental issues.
Exactly. So you can imagine a day that's coming that you can have an apothecary or a list of supplements that are different organisms that have a different role in the body, and that they're going to be very powerful. So
what I want to also dive into is the mental health, and how not just what probiotics and supplements we're taking to help with our gut, but diet and lifestyle and stress, and how those things also affect our gut.
exactly. And that goes back to leaky gut. Now, the scientific term for leaky gut is metabolic endotoxemia. So even when we eat, we're creating a little bit of septicemia, a little bit of toxin every time we eat. But if we have a healthy immune system and we have healthy barriers in our gut and our cells, then our body blunts it, it deals with it, it processes it, because this is a normal thing that the body's meant to deal with toxins. But if you have some challenges, either caused by taking pharmaceutical drugs or antibiotics or high levels of stress, you're breaking down those natural barriers to those toxins. And that's where the harm begins. And so just in the process of eating can be a problem for your body. And then when you add challenges of eating, food that has more toxins in it, like glyphosate or antibiotics or heavy metals, then you're putting more and more of a burden of toxicity onto the body. Plus the fact that now you've compromised your immune system. Now what you used to be able to tolerate, you no longer can tolerate.
Right. And that's what I've taught my clients, is that we're stripping away a lot of these foods that we can't have right now while we heal the gut, and introduce a little bit of intermittent fasting. Definitely get rid of the processed foods, the vegetable oils, and start reintroducing the healthy foods that could have been causing issues in the beginning. We can reintroduce them later down the road when we've healed our gut. And that's what I found for myself. And I was noticing with myself, anytime I ate chicken, for instance, I would get E. coli. Well, it wasn't necessarily that the chicken had the E. coli, but it was tripping up the detoxification pathways and strengthening the biofilm around the bacteria. And my gut microbiome was out of balance, and the bad guys were outweighing the good guys. And I'd end up with dysbiosis and bloat and feeling awful and mental fog. And now with the introduction of these, with the megaspore and the megapre and the mega mucosa, I can have foods that I couldn't have before. Now, am I going to go out and eat a ton of it? No, but I'm going to be able to be okay if I'm eating them in moderation, and my immune system and my gut are fine with dealing with them. And that's what's so great about, your immune system is everything. And I know you had some slides you wanted to share with us and go through some of the more details of the gut and the supplements. Is now a good time?
Sure. Yeah, I think some visuals kind of help people understand these concepts. So, okay, so I just need to figure out how to advance this slide here. Okay, can you see it advance?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so you already mentioned that Microbiome Labs has been around. It's not a brand new company. It's been in the industry. We've got a world-renowned microbiologist and clinicians that have put this together, and it's research-based. And we're also backed by one of the biggest biological companies based out of Denmark, and that's One Health division in Novozymes. So we're very well situated to be the gut microbiome experts in this space. And we have a lot of products and a stool testing that is the most advanced technology. Our approach is very different than other companies in that we look at the terrain versus the germ theory. And that is that by creating a healthy environment, like you said, the body is able to heal. So that's the big part of what we're doing is we're really creating and reconditioning an environment that is going to be self-sustaining. So we do have some recommendations that are going to help with specific conditions, but it's not going to be the extermination type of approach. It's going to be a very specific strategy that's going in and neutralize toxins and help remove them. And we're going to deal with the collateral damage that a lot of these organisms and pathogens have caused. And then there's a maintenance that's going to be an insurance program to really help the person with all the daily stressors that we're up against. This picture is to reinforce that we are in an orchestra of organisms. We have satellite microbiomes all over our body. Our gut is really the headquarters. And these organisms have some amazing capabilities, such as quorum sensing. Now, that's the ability to give out a chemical surveillance system so that they know where they're at. They know where to colonize. They know who else is in their environment, how many, what species, and what to do about them. If you have a hierarchical organism like the spores, then they're like the sheriff in town, and they know, who the criminals are, and they can make their own custom antibiotics to make a smart bomb and go after specific pathogens. So that's the kind of defense that you want on your side and that you want in your gut to, clean things up and help you with your biochemistry. This is a real helpful schematic to show what is going on in your gut. Now, the diagram on the left is a representation of a healthy gut. This is what we want, a strong mucin 2 barrier. That's that thick gelatinous blue layer that's over the epithelial cells. It's protecting them. So you can see that the microvilli is like a brush border. That's where the absorption takes place. And so that needs to be protected. Those tight junctions need to be protected because the immune system is part of this border and below it in systemic circulation. But on the right, you can see that the system's really damaged, and you can see the lipopolysaccharide that's eating into that mucin 2 layer and degrading it. And then it's breaking through the tight junctions, and it's letting all of the toxins and pathogens and cellular waste pass through and get into the lumen of the cell where the immune system doesn't know what to do with it except to attack it. And this is where all the inflammation and the cascade of interleukins and cytokines, and that's increasing the entire body's burden of inflammation. So that's what we're focused on. That's what we've studied. And we have numerous research and clinical trials out there, making sure that we know what's happening and what to do about it. And this is the environment we're trying to create. This is, again, that terrain theory, that if everything is in balance, the body takes care of itself. But unfortunately, a lot of individuals it's like an arid desert. They're very damaged. Their biochemistry, their immune system is completely affected by this environment that needs to be revitalized. And then we go through, to train people what to do with different situations. And, SIBO is an example, very complex symptomology. This is, small intestinal bowel overgrowth, where it's one of the, where the bloating and the gas and a lot of issues start. But we have multiple recommendations that we give that we help practitioners deal with. So that's just kind of a taste of what we specialize in, that we're consulting with practitioners such as yourself to take on the most difficult of gut issues.
Awesome. And I've tried the Mega Guard as well. Let's go through the Mega Spore and
Mhm.
the Mega Pre and the Mega Mucosa, because the way they work together has really healed and sealed my gut. And that's what I've seen a huge difference in my clients as well.
Super. Yeah, we use the Megaspore, which has the 5 different spores to recondition the gut. And again, those spores have that quorum sensing. So they get in there and they immediately start sensing what's going on, what needs to happen, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, what components. And that's when these organisms ferment, they make metabolites that feed other bacteria. So they're either feeding their friends or they're attacking their enemies. So that's the first thing you want to get kind of on the scene, is the sheriff to start taking care of that issue. And that's reconditioning. And then once you get the bad guys locked up and the good guys identified, then you want to start feeding them. And that's what the reinforcement is. That's where our prebiotic comes in. It's a mixture of oligosaccharides. And oligosaccharides are like the smorgasbord for keystone bacteria. The most important bacteria in our gut will feed on the prebiotic. And then the last step is rebuilding that mucin 2. Remember that thick gelatinous layer that protects the epithelial cell wall? That's what our mega mucosa does. It's a mixture of amino acids and citrus polyphenols and immunoglobulins that rebuild, they help with the modulate the immune system and rebuild that mucin 2 layer. And that's what we call the total gut restoration.
And correct me if I'm wrong, eating processed foods is tearing down that mucosa lining and eating.
Yeah, absolutely, because the gut bacteria are feeding off of what we eat. And if we're eating junk, we're starving them and they can't protect the environment. It breaks down and then it gets holes in it and starts leaking.
And what's interesting too, and I've talked about this in one of my articles about how to suppress your appetite, essentially. And there's a signaling that goes on where your body, from amino acids and omega-3 fatty acids, your body releases CCK, which is a hormone that tells the brain, I'm good, I'm full, I'm satisfied, I'm not hungry anymore. Well, when you eat processed foods, that strips away the mucosal lining. It strips away the ability for the body to release that CCK or hear the signaling. And so that's why you can eat and eat and eat a whole bunch of processed foods or junk food without feeling satisfied. And you're not absorbing any nutrients. You're still starving, right? You're nutrient starved because you're not eating real food that's nutrient packed. But when the gut is intact and you're eating whole foods that are without the toxins, you're getting that signal to the brain that says, I'm full, I'm satisfied. And it's not about a lack of willpower. It's about your gut being healthy and communicating with your brain. And once people understand that, they really get this aha moment, like, I am in control of my appetite. I'm in control, and I actually feel better. I have better mental energy and better physical energy. Tracy, we need to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back and dive deeper into the different supplements and healing that gut.
Super.
Welcome back to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sarah Banta, the owner of Accelerated Health Products. And today we have Tracy Carmack from Microbiome Labs. Tracy, so what other tips would you give someone? They're taking the Mega Pre, the Mega Spore, the Mega Mucus. Can you talk about where intermittent fasting and the proper foods that you would recommend to feed the gut naturally? Because people will ask me saying, well, we can't just do it all on with supplements, right? What foods are going to be helping with the gut and encouraging that healthy environment that we're getting from the supplements as well?
Super. Yeah. And a lot of this information we know because we study the gut in the stool test BiomeFX, and it's a whole genomic sequencing. So what we see are these keystone strains, such as Akkermansia musciphylla. And this is an important organism for your metabolism. And when you're fasting, it thrives. So that's where the intermittent fasting comes along. That's one of the reasons you would want to increase the fast. And there's different ways that people will do it. They start with, the typical 8 hours when you're sleeping, and then you start eating later in the morning until you're eating within an 8-hour period, and you're not eating the rest of the time. So that's kind of the goal target that you're after. And that's increasing certain organisms, like what I mentioned. But also the fibers that you're consuming are real important for feeding those keystone strains. We know that resistant fibers, things that we may not particularly want to eat, but if you think about eating for your microbiome, then you're creating ratios of organisms that are going to work toward your metabolism better. And it's those ratios, we look at that as well in our test, the Firmicutes versus Bacteroides. And we know that individuals that have a higher ratio of Firmicutes have a harder time losing weight. And they are the ones that will tend to have blood sugar issues and diabetes, and the whole, metabolic syndrome aspect. So that's, how we're monitoring these type of conditions. And then we give recommendations to people with their lifestyle and their diet and their supplements.
So you're telling me that just by the change in the microbiome, you could lose weight?
Yes. And we've looked at studies as well, the ghrelin and the, other components like what you mentioned on satiation, how people are hungry or not hungry is very much controlled by the organisms in our gut.
And I find the same thing is what I find with my clients as well. So what about a low carb ketogenic diet and the short chain fatty acids in the gut, and how do they enhance the gut bacteria?
Well, and we've found it's different for different people. Our BiomeFX has a saccharolytic and proteolytic aspect. We can see, is this person eating that benefits their microbiome? If they're eating too many proteins, they're going to be producing some metabolites that are not healthy for them. If they're eating the wrong type of carbohydrates in a saccharolytic fermentation, we can see where their metabolites are building up. So people's individual microbiomes determine really what type of diet you should be eating.
And now, as we are all, especially right now in January of 2022, we've got a virus that's roaming the world. How does the gut affect the immune system? You hear about your gut, your immune system is 80% in the gut. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Well, we have, T cells, and the Treg cells are extremely important. They're what help us recognize what's helpful and what's harmful. And these spores help develop our Treg cells. And so that's really important. If they're not working properly, then we're not protecting ourselves. And all of this happens in the gut. So that just underscores how important the GALT is, which is the gut-associated lymphoid tissue that makes up that 80% of our immune system. And, look at the way you contract a virus, which is typically in your mucous membranes in your nose and mouth. And you've got secretory IgA. Once it arrests a pathogen, it travels to the M cell of the gut, which is like an interrogation room. And then you've got components that work like an executioner. And that's, again, where the spores come into. They create beta defensins, which is like a bullet that then kills the pathogen. So, your whole immune system is working together, but the biggest component is actually happening in the gut.
And then what about vaginal health? And where do the probiotics or the spores act on the vaginal health? A lot of women suffer from UTIs and bladder and kidney infections. Are we getting benefit from these supplements as well?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different aspects of this. First of all, remember that quorum sensing that I had mentioned before. And this is even when you have an organism that is not colonizing in a particular area, it has an effect. And that's through that chemical surveillance system. So when you bring on the spores, they act like the sheriffs, and the whole body really senses that they're on board. And the other thing is reducing that inflammation in the gut is going to improve your immune system all over your body. So if you're prone to vaginal infections, by helping your gut, you're going to help your immune system that's going to help those vaginal infections, to prevent them. So that's important to realize. The other thing is many women don't realize some of the vaginal lubes that their gynecologists are using can permanently damage their vaginal microbiome. And so this is an area that we have looked into, and we have a keynote symposium that we do once a year, and we've brought in experts from all of these different type of satellite microbiomes, like dermatologists and gynecologists that focus on the microbiomes in those areas. And that's how we're getting the latest information about these. And this is what they're saying. So it's really important, that the type of lubes that women are using, being very careful. There are certain douches that damage this area. And just to underscore, this is, the portal of life. That vaginal canal, especially for a woman that is in her, fertile years and having children, that's the first inoculation of the infant's microbiome. So it's important to keep that area very healthy. And so this is a very intense area of research on how to do that.
And I was listening to a recording from your company about how the microbiome changes from when the baby is 0 to 2 years old versus then when they start eating real food, and how quickly the microbiome can change depending on what we're eating. Can you walk through that a little bit?
Yes. So in developmental microbiomes, for instance, again, what affects it greatly is prenatal. What's going on with the mother and the mother's microbiome. What kind of heavy metals is she exposed to, and antibiotics. So all of that has to be taken into consideration. And if you can talk to a woman before she even conceives, that's even better. But once you've got now this infant born, if they're born vaginally and breastfed, they're going to have the best chance of having a stronger microbiome. And then the microbiome is going to be completely mature at 835 days. That's 2.5 years. So at that point, the way that the child was born, the way the child was breastfed or not, and the environment that the child was exposed to has had its effect and is going to be with that child now for the rest of the individual's life.
Wow.
So after that point, what we can hope to do is influence the ratios of those organisms, but the fingernail blueprint is already set.
So that means that the mom really has a huge impact on the baby's lifelong microbiome.
Correct.
And whether they were born C-section or vaginally.
Right.
Well, that's a lot of pressure on us moms. I wish I knew now. I knew then, but what I know now, because I did everything wrong, as I've mentioned before. But hopefully, there's ways with supplements like that you guys are carrying to help heal the gut and put us all on the right way. Let's talk about antibiotics, because it is really easy to just say, you know what, I don't feel well. Let's just go grab the antibiotic. And what that is doing and how disruptive it is to the whole immune system and the gut microbiome.
Right. And the first thing to consider is what condition is the person's microbiome and immune system in before you take the antibiotics. And that's very different for different people. Some people can take an antibiotic and 3 or 4 days they bounce back like nothing happened. Other people can take an antibiotic and they have a lifelong damage. So it's very individual, and we just don't know because we don't really test these people before we give them antibiotics.
Right.
So, of course, the antibiotic is going to have an effect on the organisms in their gut, because that's what they're designed to do, is to kill bacteria, but they're not selective. They're not just going after particular organisms. So a broad spectrum antibiotic, of course, is going to have broad spectrum damage. So our hope is that people will consider the terrain method. How do we improve your good keystone bacteria? Because many of them have their own antibiotics that work on a cellular level that is very specific and doesn't hurt their neighbors. It just goes after that particular organism. There's also more natural type of antibiotic, such as certain herbs, that we would prefer someone would do before they would go to the pharmaceutical.
Well, and when you take an antibiotic, you're killing off the bad and the good bacteria, but it's not touching the fungus, the candida, the viruses. And so the whole balance of the microbiome is out of whack. And that's where then some of the other things that you're not targeting are going to take hold of the body. It's you're fighting something over here, and over here, something's going to take on, and your immune system isn't strong enough to fight that. I remember a client of mine had recurring UTIs, and then finally it ended up into a bladder infection, and she took antibiotics. She said, Sarah, I couldn't handle it anymore. And about a month later, she said, God, I just am not happy. I'm just not happy. And she's a happy person. And so all of a sudden it's like, well, you have to, the neurotransmitters, let's talk about that. The happy hormones and the mental health, how that's really connected to the gut.
Yes. I mean, there's been studies even about pheromones, that it could be that the organisms in your gut are the source of the pheromones that determine who you're attracted to. So if there's that much control of these organisms, we have to really respect them.
Absolutely. So what is the mechanism of, your serotonin and your dopamine and your other neurotransmitters? How is that affected by the microbiome?
Well, there's 2 different ways. One is the actual organisms themselves genetically produce, in their metabolism, they produce some of these actual neurotransmitters like GABA. Others produce enzymes that will break down conjugated hormones like estrogen. And that's, through beta glucuronidase. So if you have many of these organisms that produce that enzyme, then when your body's trying to carry out that excess estrogen and get rid of it, it's hitting your gut and it's unconjugating and recycling the estrogen. And now you're estrogen dominant. So it's vastly, imbalancing your hormones at that point.
And this is something that I've talked about as far as just your detoxification pathways, that when they're clogged and everything backs up, and it's like a train that the whole track gets backed up, right? So you have all your systems stop working. Well, Tracy, we have just a couple minutes left. Is there anything that we're missing as far as the gut and how to heal the gut, and any other tips and tricks on making sure we are getting the strongest bulletproof immune system and gut?
Well, I definitely think if people haven't been exposed or understand the spore aspect, it's a very different type of probiotic, and the spore it's like a spaceship, so that it protects it, so it doesn't get digested as it's going through the stomach and through the bile, and is actually colonizing. But this is very natural, and so I would encourage people to look at this and to see that it's important for the development of their immune system as well.
And I have to just say, on a personal note, I've been doing intermittent fasting, a low carb diet, really eliminating the processed foods and eating mostly organic, wild animal protein, staying away from even organic chicken and conventional beef, which can trip up the system, the digestive system. And when I incorporated Megaspore, when I first did, I felt like World War III was going on in my stomach. And I'm like, well, there's something going on. It's working.
Mhm.
And then when I introduced the Mega Pre and the Mega Mucosa, it was within just days that I felt a full seal of my gut. And even when I travel, and travel was always the thing that would trip my system up, even if I would go to really clean restaurants, my body just didn't do well with things that were just out of line just a little bit. And now it's not a problem at all, because my whole gut is sealed. I feel stronger mentally, physically. The bloat is gone. The going between diarrhea and constipation is gone, and it's much more consistent. And that's something that I've never had in my 46 years of life. It's never been consistent. And we haven't even gotten into the effect on skin, but I've noticed a difference in consistency of less breakouts on my skin. And also I've noticed that with my clients as well, with people that are prone to breakouts or acne. And during this period of time, with all the heavy toxins that we're being exposed to, a lot of people are expressing that they're getting these skin rashes, the shingles, the just acne breakouts, but all different types of skin issues. And the way the gut is affecting the skin is also very interesting, in how once you heal your gut, your skin is going to be healed as well and improve. And as we heal our gut, we're going to reverse chronic disease. We're going to reduce that inflammation. We're going to reduce that oxidative stress in our body, and we're going to reverse aging. And that is the goal of what I'm trying to do. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. I would love to have you back, because there's so much about the gut to talk about. And the company, I'm just blessed to have your company represented on my website, and super excited. So thank you, Tracy, for coming on. And thank you, everybody else, for joining us today. You can contact me, Sarah Banta, directly through my website if you have any issues with your own health. I'm happy to put together a protocol for you. You can find the Accelerated Ascent Diet Cleanse on the website as well. It comes with the free group coaching. It is life-changing, because you're not only having the tools, but also the guidance to really take back the control of your life. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products, and my YouTube channel under Accelerated Health Radio. You can find this episode and all my episodes on over 100 channels, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Pandora, or whatever podcast platform you subscribe to. I also do Accelerated Health Bites, where I do short informational videos about health topics and solutions that you ask me about. So if you have a health condition or topic you want me to address, just let me know. And if you liked what you heard today, please share with a few friends. We all have gut issues. This one is definitely one to share. As you share my channel, it helps me help more people like you and bring more cutting edge guests to the show. You can find the supplements and the videos at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. You can use coupon W4HC20 for 20% off site-wide. Thanks again for joining us, and see you next week. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, Sarah. Good to meet you.